What do you think is the hardest thing that this team's going to have to learn about trying to defend this thing?
Well, I think, you know, we'd like to think that we're in a position to try to defend a championship. I think the biggest thing we got to realize first before we can even think like that, we got to be in the game first. And what puts us in the game is, in my opinion, is, you know, this team has some shortcomings as of today that hopefully we'll be much better at, you know, by conference season, that we're going to have to learn how to win by making somebody else play worse. And maybe it's defense, maybe it's stealing extra possessions, you know, maybe it's how to create a way where even if you're stale offensively, that you can create some opportunities that would be easier baskets than playing against 5-on-5. I think there's a lot of things, Matt, that we have to do to put ourselves in a position to be good enough to have to defend. And I don't think we're quite there yet. And I'm not being negative, that's just factual. I do like our team. I do think we have talent. I do think we're going to get better as we get older. But, you know, you take for granted some experience, and we basically returned 2 guys that have played any meaningful minutes off a team that won a championship last year. So it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, perfect segue, because I'm wondering too, with those guys like KJ and Zach and
Joe,
Bobby and Joe, the guys that are still young but were here last year, is there something collectively that they have to understand to take this next step into what you need them to be this year?
Well, I think well, first of all, I think they learned a ton by being here and playing with and behind those other guys last year. But I still don't think that we totally grasp why that team won last year. That team won because of intangibles. And I don't think that we totally grasp that yet. I think we take talking for granted. I think we take how to learn how to compete on each possession. I think we take paying attention to detail for granted, because that was what that team did best, and I don't think this team has quite bought into that. And that team didn't buy into it when they were freshmen, but certainly last year they were totally bought into that.
Did the team show you any of these concerns at the secret scrimmage, or what did you learn at the secret scrimmage?
That's twice in 2 sentences we heard the term secret that everybody knows about. So
change the narrative of the question.
During the secret scrimmage, I would tell you, but I can't because it's a secret. I think that I actually thought we played better than I thought we did live action. I think we did some good things. We got the ball where we wanted to go a lot. We defended at least average. But the thing about it is, when we get the ball to where it wants it to go, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a basket from where it wants to go. You know, last year's team, if David gets it at 2 feet with an angle, you can count it as 2, and we can't quite count it as 2 yet. So it's hard to say you played poorly when you got the ball where you wanted it to go. We just didn't finish as well. But I think there were some good things that happened the other day. But you know, Illinois and us are a lot alike. They've got a whole new team, and we've got a whole new team, and they're young, and we're young. But the thing I think that was probably the best thing about the scrimmage was the situations that we were able to go through. A lot of them. I mean, every segment that we did, no matter what it was, came down to last possession. So whether you're playing with a 3-point lead with a minute left, or playing down 3 with a minute left, or having to get a 2 for 1 with the tie game with 50 seconds left. I mean, there was a lot of situations that we were in that I think will help us understand better about what wins and what costs you games than if we hadn't gone through that. Because working on in practice, we will, but I think seeing it live game, and that's why we won, or that's why we lost a segment, I think will put some more value to what we're working on in practice.
Bill, last year's wings, I mean, you would be the person to say just how great they were, but probably not fair to compare anyone to them. But talk about this year's wings. You do have one experienced guy returning. You brought in another guy with experience. You got some young guys. We just talk about those guys as a whole.
I do think that Jalen and Kevin are championship, starters. Jalen's already proven that, and Kevin certainly is too. And I think Juan is a championship guard. Grady and MJ and KJ and Joe and Bobby, they've got to raise their level to the point where they understand exactly what their role needs to be to give us the best chance to win. And I think they will. It's just going to take time. I mean, you go from competing against 16, 17-year-olds, and then the next year the expectations are such where you're supposed to be the equal of 21-year-olds across America, and it's just going to take some time. But I do think we've had a good fall. I'm not trying to be negative. I just think the reality is it's going to take some time. But I like our wings. The thing that we don't do as well as last year with our wings, and of course they were 22 and 21 years old, is they could get us easy baskets because Ochai could outrun everybody and jump over everybody, and Christian could bully everybody or jump over everybody in transition. And our guys now have to play. We don't do that consistently like we could. Like Ochai could play like crap, like he did against Oklahoma last year, and in the last 3 minutes win a game for you. I don't feel that our guys are mature enough to know how to do that yet. So, but we'll get there.
Coach, this is the first time in a long time that you haven't had Mitch Lightfoot on your team. Is it a little different, a little bit weird to not have him around here, or how much do you still see him?
No, I actually thought it was weirder having him here. But we love Mitch and we miss him, and we will miss him more. But the thing we talked today, it's without going into too much detail, but there was a lot of talk last year with David that, God dang, do we keep going with him? And the only reason you wouldn't keep going with him is because Mitch is good enough to be that guy. And Mitch was close to good enough to being that guy, but we all thought at the end, well, who can get you 20 and 10 in a big game? And that wasn't what Mitch could do. Mitch was a great complementary guy. He had the perfect role for our team last year, was Mitch. And Mitch understood that. So he was more valuable to us than what his numbers ever showed. This year, what's going to be more difficult is, do you have a guy that can get you 10 and 6 in a real game? And the answer is going to be, it's going to be hard. Those young kids are young, and they weren't recruited to be those guys right off the bat. So even though they have to be that way. So we're going to miss Mitch. We're going to miss David, and I never knew we'd probably miss them as much as we are right now, just because of last year. They both frustrated us and me to the point where, get us some different guys in here and some athletes and all that stuff. We're going to be fine. And we did that, but those guys are still so young, and so we're going to miss that. What David McCormick did at the end of the season last year, guys, was it wasn't the equivalent of what Nick has done here, or maybe what obviously not what Danny has done here, or things like that, or what Rafe has done here. But even on just as big a stage as those guys ever played on, they didn't play better than him, except for Danny, in those biggest moments. So when you really think about it, and so David McCormick's the best player in the Final Four, and so we're going to miss those guys a lot. But we got young guys. It's just going to take time for them to grow into it.
Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, is there anything you take from after winning your first national championship, going into that following season, and then winning this one and going into this season for yourself when it comes to coaching?
I would say there's a couple of things. One is you have to capitalize on success immediately. the better you do in a business, I think that's the time to put your foot on the gas to make sure that you hit it as hot as you can, hard you can when it's hot. And on the flip side, if you have negative momentum, you want to hit as hard ahead to eliminate the negative momentum, but we want to extend the momentum. So that's one thing that I hope that we did a better job this year of than in 08. You know, a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of pats on the back, all that stuff doesn't have one thing to do with you getting better. And so hopefully we handled that better. Still remains to be seen. And then the I forgot what I was going to say on the other thing. I would say this: the pressure is never off to win, never off to win. But maybe the pressure is off a little bit to have your new players that don't know yet feel pressure from the coach because there's pressure to win. Does that make sense? So I think that's something that I could probably learn from a little bit, in that to enjoy it more, because in order for us to have a chance to be really good, it's going to be a process, and to enjoy the process, and there's no reason to put pressure on the young kids because we haven't won big in a long time. We just won big last year. So I think that's the drive, and everything's got to be the same, but maybe I can coach them in a way where maybe they feel less pressure from me because there's enough pressure from them being talked about. You got to defend the championship. So I think that's something that I hope we'll do better this time than I did last time, if that made any sense at all. And as you can know, I just thought about it as you asked the question. I've never thought about it before, but I hope that was okay.
How fast can this team play? How fast do you want them to play? Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, we want to play fast. We need to score before the defense gets set. But how well we shoot it will probably be a big determination on how fast we play. Because this team should shoot more threes than last year's team, and should. And if we do that, then you need to make 35% as a team, or 36, in order to probably play fast, or probably play efficient enough that warrants playing fast and shooting early. So I think a big key to our team is just making shots.
Anyone surprised you the last couple weeks? You talked a lot about Zuby and Ernest and how they're ahead, but anybody outside of that's been a surprise?
I don't know that we've been surprised by anybody lately. Maybe Jank. Jank shoots it so good. Do you try to figure out a way where he can be your ninth man and just come in and hopefully get 3 looks and a half and make 2? But other than that, I think we're pretty much where we thought we'd be.
Would that be? I mean, Connor had a different role, obviously, not ninth man, but T-end. Would there be an opportunity for him?
I don't know if I don't know that yet. But if this team labors to score, I mean, we can scrimmage every day, and if we're just going to score the most points we can, Jank needs to be on the floor. So I mean, he's good enough to do that. But obviously, defensively and athletically, he's probably not as to the point where he can play the same way that we probably want to play and be effective doing it. But he's been a very pleasant surprise.
Coach, you talk about the circumstance. Accurate. Talk about the circumstance of having just a couple of key guys back from a championship team. I'm just wondering how DeJuan and Jalen and to some extent Kevin have embraced the role of mentor for the young players that you do have.
I think pretty good. I think that Jalen's voice is probably the best and respected voice on our team right now. I think Juan's could be, but he's a quiet kid by nature, and he needs to get outside his comfort zone a little bit. But I think they've both done a good job. I don't know that Kevin's comfortable enough to really be the leader vocally that he will be by Christmas, just because it's still kind of new to him. But yeah, those 3 are all terrific leaders.
Michael?
I think in Big 12 Media Days, you compared MJ to a young Wayne Selden. What is it about MJ that makes you feel that way?
I mean, athletically, they're almost young mean, they're almost identical. Same body type, same explosion. They probably shoot it about the same. You know, Wayne wasn't a great shooter when he got here, but he was more of a scorer than a shooter. There's a lot of things. The thing I would say is Wayne's probably a little bit more advanced in his years as far as being a player. It seems like Wayne was legitimately maybe a year or so ahead of maybe his class, just because he'd had so many experiences maybe that MJ hadn't had yet. But I physically, I see a ton of similarities.
And with MJ, what do you feel like his role might look like on the team this year?
I think his role will be totally different in February than it is now. I don't think he's comfortable yet, and he shows flashes. There's no question. He's trying hard. He's a great kid, and he wants to be good, and he certainly wants to please. But he's still got a lot of stuff to learn before he can really untie his mind to the point where he can play to his athletic ability, I think.
These guys out there talked about the team having a big personality. Is that the case this year? And how much do you encourage that versus maybe reel them in when they're young and you got to take care of business? And I guess the second half of that, do you coach this team differently because it is a lot of younger guys, whereas last year we didn't have to coach as much?
Well, I think that when you say don't coach as much, I don't know that that's absolutely the case, because no matter what the team is or where you're at, you're still going to push the boundaries to the point where your team can actually accept them and go along with you. Like last year's team, we may not coach them as much, but we could put 5 new sets we're going to run the next day in, and they could go out and run the next deal. Where this year it may be a little bit more meat and potatoes until they get to the point where they can do that. So it may look like we're not coaching this year's team as much because we won't do as much stuff. But I think we'll coach them. I don't know that I want to coach them differently, but I just want to coach them in a way where they understand what we think wins and they buy into it. And if they do that, we're going to be pretty good. We're going to be pretty good.
Coach, could you give us a comment on what you want to see from Zach this year? What kind of ceiling you think you might be able to develop this year?
Well, I don't know. I mean, our big guys are 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. There's nobody that has emerged ahead of anybody, and I mean anybody as far as definite playing time and everything. But we'd like for Zach to be a guy that in a perfect world, and the way I saw it going into a season, to have a great chance to be a starter. He's got to be a post presence, even though he's a perimeter post man, but he's still got to be a post presence and score the ball in tight, and he's got to be able to defend the paint and the rim. And I think he has potential to do that. The thing about it is with a lot of guys coming off the bench last year, whether it be Joe and we saw flashes, or Zach and we saw flashes, roles are changed. It's a little bit easier to be a flash guy than it is to be a guy that needs to get numbers consistently and that stuff. And so I think Zach was really good in some games, and we remember the OU game here when he came in and sparked us or whatnot. But that's just a small snippet of what really playing is, and do you just play him because he's matched up against a perimeter 5-man, or is he able to guard Oscar or Trace Jackson Davis? I mean, those are totally different questions, and so you'd like for the same guy to be able to do both. So those are the things that we'll need to figure out as we go with our big guys.
Anything else for Coach? Gary.
I just wondered how Bobby's doing. He said today it's the healthiest he's felt in a long time.
Yeah. In the secret scrimmage the other day, I thought he moved very well. I think Bobby's he hasn't had a great fall, but that's only because he's only been healthy about a week. But in the times that he's been healthy, he's looked pretty impressive. So I'm excited about him. In a perfect world, it would just be nice to know if Juan's not in the game, Bobby run your team in a perfect world. And so if it's not that way, then Kevin will have to be the guy probably. But I do like where Bobby's at right now.
Where do you see Joe's confidence right now?
I think it's pretty high.
Yeah.
Joe was really good in the scrimmage the other day. I think it's, although we can't talk about it, secret scrimmage, but Joe needs to go score. He needs to be a guy that when he's in the game that he feels the freedom that he has to go attack and score. I think that's how he can help us the most.
It's obviously one thing for him to understand that, but do you think his teammates do too?
I think so. I mean, it's an emphasis we make every day. So I do think they understand that. I do.
And then with Jalen, he fell into that role last year as everything he was for you. Do you foresee him being different? I know you need him to have a big year, you've said that, but will he have to play different or just do more of that and do it more often and do it better?
I think he still needs to be a jack of all trades. I think he needs to do what he did last year better. And I think he will. But the one thing that you'll see more for Jalen is a big confidence guy. Not so much that he didn't believe in himself. He just knew last year that, there's a couple other guys, even though it's hard for a player to admit, there's probably a better option to shoot the ball than what he was. This year he won't see it that way, which hopefully is going to be a really good thing for us and for him. So.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, guys.